Now for Channel 4's Animation Week, the cartoons that kick ass. The programme has animations that contain sexual images.
Animation sucks.
The attitude and the idea of animation is that it is childlike, it is innocent, it is very clean. And when you find out they're not, then it's a terrible shock.
An artist is manipulating every frame. So inherent in the process of animation is the way that one can manipulate thoughts and can be very subversive.
Revolt! Revolt!
You can get away with creating an image that looks like they're cute and cuddly animals and then have them do something which really carries another sort of message.
That same quality that can soften the message is the exact same thing that makes it a very powerful tool, because you have the viewer where you want them.
I was working by myself, and when you're drawing it, you're more tempted to go to a darker place because it's just, maybe it's easier to do.
Kiss my red hot devil ass. Now I've seen everything.
It may seem like the naughty cartoon is a recent phenomena, but animation has always found inspiration in the dirty scribblings of the toilet wall.
What we have to remember is that cartoons are made by adults, and adults at this time in the Hollywood studios were party to some fairly reckless practices. All of them were living adult lives, shall we say. They were drinking, they were gambling, they were enjoying very much the high decadence of the Hollywood moment. This passes into the films. We actually see it on screen. One particular example, of course, of this is Buried Treasure.
Ever Ready Hard On was a film about a gentleman with a giant appendage. And I'm talking about giant, I mean, you know, like 2 feet. Trying to find himself satisfaction. And he tries every which way possible. And it shows that these animators certainly did have a naughty mind. But it wasn't the type of thing they could show in their daily work.
It was made to be presented as a gag film and shown to Winsor McCay. And Winsor McCay was the man who started the animation business in New York in the teens. So it was their way of saying, thank you for starting animation. Look what we've done to it. And it got quite a reputation. It was widely circulated. It wasn't copyright, you know, so it ended up in theaters. It ended up being circulated as a 16mm film for bachelor parties.
I think the average public didn't know so much about that side of animation, and they assumed that animation was done by nice, clean people for nice, clean children who were going to the movies.
Master of fantasy, weaver of dreams, and winner of 29 Academy Awards.
Our image of animation as innocuous kid stuff is primarily down to one man, Mr. Disney. But at the same time Uncle Walt was spreading his fairy dust of innocence, rival studios were concentrating on material that would excite the grown-ups. The homegrown Fleischer Brothers studio, based in New York City, was one of the most successful. They offered audiences surreal, sexually titillating visions centered around the exploits of their most popular star, Betty Boop.
The Betty Boop shorts were very much characterised by a very adult sensibility. In them were very clear depictions of sexually orientated material that very much was suggesting that Betty was child whore. Betty was part of a sexually harassing culture. Betty was just someone who we could look at and really enjoy for the sexual premises she seemed to suggest.
Fleischer was there at the beginning of animation, the black and white silent days. Animation in the beginning was like any brand new medium that was being done in little barns and one rooms in New York City and in someone's living room, where very strange people were entering it who needed a buck.
The Fleischers embraced what they understood to be black culture at that time and its liberations and its apparent Dionysiac sort of qualities, you know, very much given to having a good time and seeking out pleasure and not having limits. They spent a long time, for example, out in Harlem enjoying the kind of nightclub life there. They often went to the Cotton Club and they had relationships with people like Cab Calloway.
Cab Calloway was part of that dangerous, edgy, black scene of the time. So, yeah, when he sings his song about Minnie the Moocher is cokey, you know, he says as one of the lines, you know, they put it onto the film as part of his art.
She messed around with a bloke named Smokey. She loved him though he was cokey. Hoddy, hoddy, ho. Hoddy, hoddy, ho. Hoddy, hoddy, hoddy. Hoddy, hoddy, hoddy.
They didn't know they were doing anything wrong. That's what all their friends enjoyed, and that's how they lived. That became to Middle America very risque.
The decadence of the movie business proved too much for Middle America, and by the early 1930s, a public outcry forced the motion picture industry to clean up its act. A set of strict guidelines known as the Hays Code were enforced in an effort to wipe out all images that might be offensive to the public. Cartoons, however, presented the Hays Office with some rather novel areas of concern.
The first issue was Cal's Udders. And Cal's Udders, you know, cows have udders. It's a known fact. I mean, every kid who's ever seen a cow has seen udders. But all of a sudden, these are tits. And they said, oh, no, we can't show that. That might offend somebody. Who it would offend, I have no idea.
The Hays Office basically eliminated any language. The characters said damn and hell in cartoons. They took that out. There were a lot of sexual innuendo in cartoons, and they got rid of that. And the raucous, wild, early 30s cartoons came to an end.
But animators were not so easy to manipulate. Used to having frame-by-frame control over their painted worlds, many of them, such as Bob Clampett at Warner Brothers, couldn't resist the temptation to sneak dubious material past the censors.
Oh, there's a cartoon called Itch in Time, where there's a flea on a dog's butt, and the flea's just, you know, driving the dog nuts.
He has to act like he's not itching, but he's desperately itching. It's a strange cartoon.
And the dog freaks out and he starts pulling himself along the kitchen floor. You know when you see a cat's got something stuck to its butt or a dog and they pull themselves along in their ass? And he's whipping all the way around the room. And he does this for like 30 seconds, and all of a sudden he stops. And he says,
hey, I better cut this out. I may get to like it.
You know, and then he goes on. And that's in the cartoon, and it wasn't supposed to be.
Bob told me that he intended that joke to get cut out. He used to put jokes in on purpose to get past the censors so that they would leave in the stuff he really wanted. Well, that was one of the ones that he didn't think would ever go through, and they missed it. They didn't get it, so they left that one in.
certainly the practice of slipping in secret images, forbidden images, occurred as recently as the feature film Who Framed Roger Rabbit, in which there is a scene where Jessica Rabbit is thrown from a car, and for a few frames one can see directly up her dress and nothing is hidden.
The animator told me, I didn't know that the ink and paint department would leave in the loving details that I drew.
The Disney guys used to come to my studio at night. We used to drink after work, all the guys. And they used to say that they slipped in a 2-frame underwear shot on Minnie Mouse. Or they slipped in a 1-second, brassiere. And they were really proud of the fact that they had somehow subverted this cartoon. And I thought that was ridiculous. I'm saying, if people don't see it, you haven't done anything.
If you have to put in hours and hours and hours creating, a couple of minutes of motion on an animated film, you're going to try to make it as interesting for yourself as possible. If some of it shades towards the frat boy end of the spectrum in terms of being a little bit kind of crude or overtly sexual in tone, it's only to be expected.
The intense atmosphere of World War II provoked a change in the censorship of animated films in the US. After all, the troops needed morale boosting, and if that meant showing a little more tits and ass, then so be it.
Our soldiers, our boys, our young men were going off to the army, and pin-ups were a big thing. Whistling at women was a big thing because guys were restricted from doing it. They were not home. They were not at their usual places. They couldn't be with their girls, so they had to fantasize. And Tex Avery brought back the sexy girl character.
We now give you our brand new little sweetheart of swing, that little red-headed ball of fire, Red Hot Riding Hood.
Hey, Daddy.
Tex Avery's Red Hot Riding Hood is a good example there of the exploration of the fairy tale and of adult sexuality. What we get is Red Hot Riding Hood, a vampy young dancer. What we get is the wolf being a very sexualized male character, a phallus, an erect penis, a throbbing, bulbous thing.
You better get the best for me.
There's the Hollywood wolf. And that's a takeoff on an expression, a Hollywood wolf, meaning a guy who's whistling at girls and acting like a wolf. So I don't think they were thinking of bestiality. I think it was just a comedy.
And fly away with me to the Riviera.
The censors were logical people, and having a wolf going after a woman suggested bestiality. We had to show at the end of the cartoon that the woman was being chased really by a man, so that the animators had to show the wolf tearing off its mask. And is this ridiculous or what? Preston Blair animated the scene under protest, and eventually MGM had the good sense to discard it and not pay attention to the censor.
My answer is...
No!